Michael Jamin, I'm speaking to you on the other side of the strike, almost. Hello.
Hello, Molly. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again. This is our first formal meeting.
Yes, but we're old friends. We're young friends.
I know we're young friends. But this is the first time we're doing something formally. Like everything we've done has been informal up to this point.
I know. Let's see. We have our two-man volleyball team, our co-ed volleyball team that we play on the beach. What else do we do?
Well, that one time we did pickleball.
We do our triathlons where I ride on your back and you carry me.
Exactly.
We do a lot of things
I carry
together.
you. Yes, yeah. I do. So speaking of carrying you.
Yep.
Thank you.
And speaking of carrying me.
Podcast.
Yep.
No, well, I mean, the timing on this. So it's been a couple days since we all heard the news that the writer's strike, oh my gosh, is over. I mean, not officially, but it sounds like if I'm watching all of your interviews on CNN,
taking notes,
you're feeling pretty optimistic about it. So before we get into the strike, just briefly tell everyone who you are, as if they don't know already.
Yeah. Right. My name is Michael Jamin. I'm a TV writer for about 27 years. I've written on a bunch of shows. I'll run through them fast because it's kind of, I'll do it fast. King of the Hill, Just Shoot Me, Beavis and Butthead, Out of Practice, Rules of Engagement, Wilfred, Marin, Brickleberry, Lopez, Glenn Martin DDS. I'm looking. I have a wall. I have my resume on the wall. So a bunch of shows.
The who's who of the 90s catalog.
Yes, the who's who. Who was, yes. Remember when? Yep.
But speaking of Just Shoot Me, just as an aside, I was driving somewhere, and as you know, all I do is drive.
Yeah.
But I drove by a sign for David Spade.
Yeah.
What is David? Is he doing something new? Are you noticing David Spade? Like, it was a big promo.
He has two things going on. He has a talk show. I don't know if it's still on, but he also has a podcast with Dana Carvey.
It's not the Dana Carvey. That's Fly on the Wall, and it wasn't his talk show, which I really liked on Comedy Central. But like David Spade is doing, like, I think a big show somewhere. Oh my gosh! Now that's
maybe it was his line of skincare.
Maybe. But when I saw it, I was driving and I thought of you and I thought, oh, I got to ask Michael, like, what David Spade is up to. But always hustling, right? Like, this is an industry.
Yeah, he works.
Where people are always hustling. As are you. I mean, so many people know you from TikTok. Now, I know the backstory.
That's how you know me.
That's how I know you. Exactly. But you're a screenwriter. I mean, TV writer. You're a behind the scenes guy. So just what is it about TikTok that called you?
So I have a collection of a book coming out. It's a collection of personal essays. So like David Sedaris meets Neil Simon. And my agent. Is that
what we're going with? I'm sorry.
That's what we're going
with. And Neil Simon. Okay, so tell me the qualities of each that you see yourself in, that you merge in the middle.
Well, Sedaris, he writes beautifully. I don't write in his voice. I can read anything he writes. If he writes a menu, I'll read that. Neil Simon, as a kid, I remember thinking, man, he was the guy. Like, Biloxi Blues. I love that. I love that play.
Broderick?
He was in the movie, as well as Christopher Walken, and I acted in that play in college. That's another story. That's another story for a different podcast. Do you have another podcast where I talk about that?
Where I just talk about
where I can talk about that? I'm asking. You don't pick up on a hint, do you? So what was I saying? Oh, yeah. And then I saw, as a kid, Laughter on the 42nd floor or something like that. It was Laughter on some floor, 23rd floor, whatever it was, which was his. He was a writer in Your Show of Shows with Sid Caesar, with Mel Brooks and Woody Allen, like all these greats for writers. And I remember seeing that on Broadway. My dad took me to see on Broadway. I was like, I got to do that. I want to be that.
Oh, so that's what it was with you? It was Broadway?
I went to see the show, and I was like, I want to be in a room like that. I want to be in a comedy room like that with those great writers. You can't, that was in the past, but that's what really motivated me to move to Hollywood and become a writer.
Did you watch Dick Van Dyke when you were a kid?
Sure. Yeah.
And did you love it for that reason, that they were in a comedy
It really
room?
wasn't. It didn't really feel like that was what a comedy writer's room was. It really, and it's not. I've never been in a comedy writer's room like that. But, okay.
What, with a Rosemary? Is that the problem?
But they were
female writers?
No, because there was just two people at a desk and then Dick Van Dyke. And it was like, a comedy, it doesn't work that way. Usually it's a big round table and everyone sits around a table And it's a lot more boisterous. It's a lot more like laughter on the 42nd floor, whatever that number is. It's a lot more like that. It's more like I would say like a frat house, but I was not in a fraternity, so I wouldn't really know.
No, you were too busy playing football at Princeton.
Yes.
But, and now for people who follow you on TikTok, I mean, now you talk about what it's like being a TV writer when you work with a partner and you're pitching a lot more. So that's a whole different environment for you. So what is it like pre-strike? Give me an average day for you.
There's no average day. It depends whether I'm on a show or trying to sell a show. If I'm on a show, you could easily be working. It's not uncommon to work 12 hours a day. If you're not doing a show, then I'm working with my writing partner, coming with ideas, taking meetings, trying to sell it. It's a lot more hustle. It's a lot more like, let's sell something.
Yeah. And I notice on your TikTok that you bring a different side to it. Like you open up a different door for people to come in and understand the industry, that it's not these high paid writers and creatives sitting around you, just cashing in all the checks. That there is a hustle there. Like you're always trying to pitch a show, sell a show, and the money isn't guaranteed to come in, correct?
No, not at all. I mean, certain writers like J.J. Abrams, they make a lot of money, but most of us are not living his life. So most of us are just constantly selling. Which
I think played into the strike and the narrative of the strike. So you and I could talk about 18 billion things, which is what we talk about. But right now, let's just focus on the strike. I feel far more knowledgeable about it just because of you. I mean, you've enlightened me along with so many other people about the strike. But one thing I've noticed about your coverage is you really put the human aspect on it and the kind of the everyday person.
I didn't know I was doing that. I really didn't. I thought I was just talking. And I was like, wow.
No, but you are. But people, you're bringing them behind the scenes in a sense.
Yeah.
And people look at the SAG-AFTRA strike, they hear about, Fran Drescher up there. I mean, she's the president and she's the one, leading the charge, and all these actors are out there. And when we think of actors in Hollywood, we think of money. But a lot of these writers who do fine, but you're saying the majority of them are just regular people just trying to get a paycheck like everyone else.
Yeah. Middle class. Yeah. If we're lucky, middle class. Yeah.
Middle class if you're lucky. And that's where I think you did an exceptional job working as a de facto spokesperson for the industry. I mean, you weren't official by any means.
No.
But you were really advocating for them. So when did the strike start?
I don't know. Good question. I would say it was 3.5 months ago. So when is that? May or something? I don't know.
Gosh.
Was it the first day of May or something?
June? Yeah, end of May, beginning of June. Did you all know, so you remember the Members Guild, the Writers Guild of America. So did you all know this was coming?
Yes. Yeah. My friend, so before the strike happened, the Writers Guild sends out what's called a pattern of demands. I was going to post about this, or maybe I already did. And so the pattern of demands tells everyone, this is what we think we're going to fight for. Are you guys cool? Is this what you want? Are you cool with this? And the pattern of demands this year, it goes out every 3 years because the contract is up for every 3 years. So this year I look at them and it looked unlike any pattern of demands they ever put out.
Why?
And it was because the business model changed so much with streaming that now the guild was saying, okay, we got to rethink how you're paying us because you're paying us on the old business model pre-streaming. And so when you look at the pattern, it was like they were almost starting from scratch. And I was like, oh no, it's not that I think that what we're asking for was very fair, but you're asking the studios to do a lot of work and do a lot of rethinking. And no one wants to do that. They just want to keep status quo. And so thinking about that, I was like, okay, this is going to be a big ask. It's not like we want to raise or, percent raise. It's bigger than that. And then they had a guild meeting one night to talk about this. Everyone was invited, even me. I didn't go because my Jeep was in the shop, which is where it always is.
Okay, it doesn't sound like a good excuse, but anyway, go on.
Well, I was like, I can't get there. So my friend Brian went, who's about my age. And he went, and when he comes back, I talked to him. I was like, so what was it like? And what was the mood like? He goes, oh, it's not good. And I go, well, why? He goes, because the kids, they've had it. The kids have had it. And by kids, he meant the 35-year-olds.
The millennials?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're fed up. They're done. And I go, what are the odds that there's going to be a strike? He goes, 1,000%.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yes.
he just knew from that meeting.
Yeah, because you can't get what you need unless you have two tools when you negotiate. Everyone thinks you need better leadership. No, they have two cards to play: strike and threat of strike. And threat of strike you can't play unless you strike. So that's it. That's your only choice unless they want to. The studios let us go on strike. They say, fine, go on strike. And that lasted for 3.5 months. They never made any real concessions during the regular negotiating, the bargaining. But then finally, 4 days ago, they said, okay, let's make a deal. And they hammered out a deal in 4 days. It doesn't take long to hammer out a deal when both sides are willing to negotiate.
Right. Now, you said something that never really occurred to me before, but I think this could be something. When your buddy said, oh, they're all hot, right? Like is it now the fact that so many writers, like maybe so many more younger people are in the industry and younger people, millennials, are maybe more justice driven, do you think? Or do you think that had something to do with it? Because guys like you're home simply because you don't have a ride. But all the other younger people, they probably did whatever they could to get to that meeting. But tell me, do you think that had something to do with it?
I don't think so. I just think it's harder for them. If you're new to the business, it's harder. I think it's easier to break in, but it's harder to sustain a career. Whereas I'm at the point in my career, I've been doing it so long, I don't have some of those obstacles that they have. So
like what
I
are
have
their
the
obstacles?
Network. It's like, okay, they got that first job. Well, how do you get a second one? And the first job only lasts for them 8 weeks. Great, I got a job, but it's over. That's all they wanted to hire you for is 8 weeks because that was the contract length. Now you're screwed because you're only doing 8 episodes or whatever. So they might hire you through pre-production because the orders are shorter. So when I broke in years ago, if you were on a hit show, so most writers get paid per episode produced. If you're on a hit show, like I was for the first 10 years of my career, I was doing 22 or 24 episodes in a year. So that's like 10 months worth of work. That's a great amount worth of work.
Yeah.
And, but now if you're on a hit show, you're doing maybe 2 months or 3 months worth of work because you're only doing 8 episodes. That's a hit show. And so you're screwed. What about the other, 9 months out of the year?
Okay. So now so now there was the first strike, or I don't know if it was the first strike, but the last one that everyone's familiar with was in 2008, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So what were you doing in 2008 when the strike happened?
Oh, God. So I, at the time, had an overall deal with CBS Productions, which meant I was getting paid. I know. Did I impress you, Molly?
Well, no, I didn't know you were at CBS.
Oh, yeah.
Like
CBS
Productions.
Yeah.
Oh, weren't they the ones that put out Drew Barrymore's show?
I don't know. So that just meant, so at the time I was a writer on a show called Out of Practice. They liked what me and my partner were doing. They said, hey, why don't we pay you, give you an overall deal, which is a guaranteed salary. In addition, we have to develop for them and they get, they pay us to develop other shows. Perfect. It was a 2-year deal. And so we just finished year 1 of the deal. Year 2, they put us on rules of engagement as part of our deal. Then the strike hit, and then they force majeured us, which meant our contract was broken. So we left a lot of money on the table. That was a bummer, but that's just how it goes sometimes. So they broke our deal basically, which is
so a term that many people are familiar with now, just because of the pandemic. That'd be a term that not force majeure. Not that many people knew about it, but they do now. Yeah. So in 2008. It was different, wasn't it then? So compared to this strike. So that's what I want to ask you about is what makes this strike different from 2008? That really, do you consider it a victory, this strike, the outcome?
So far, none of us have seen the terms yet, but the guild is very excited about it. So like when they're excited, when they're in a good mood, see, usually when they send out an email to everyone at the end of the negotiations, the email's like, it sounds like this. Listen, we did our best. We'll lick our wounds and we'll fight another fight tomorrow, next time. We got something, we didn't get everything, right? But this time they sent the email and it was very like, guys, you're not going to believe this.
Oh, wow. So it's like the conclave and the Pope, like, that something happened. Okay. Yeah. All right. So that's exciting. So now, so from what you know, and based on, what really happened, let's just highlight what changed in terms of strike negotiating, strike tactics. I mean, this was a very public battle that people from the outside were certainly following along, particularly on social media, and other people chiming in on it, like people like me.
And you.
Yeah, exactly. Because I liked all the crazy nuances about it.
Are we going to order dinner, Molly? I haven't seen the waiter.
No, is that a part? You think that's part of my podcast? You think I have the budget to get
dinner? I thought we were going to have dinner.
What do you think this is?
Having a dinner together.
Exactly. What do you think this is? Bob Iger in Idaho, in Sun Valley, Idaho. So let's start with Bob Iger.
Well, there's a couple of things that changed. Yeah. Okay, I'll tell you. So first, and I think I'm the only one who's publicly said this, so maybe I'm wrong.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, this is my feeling. So in 2008, I think the studios have lost their leverage this time. They misplayed their hand. In 2008, their leverage was, if you guys go on strike, you might be out of work for 3 months. Can you really afford to be out of work for 3 months? That's how I felt. And I was like, yikes, this is going to be awful. 2023, because of the term length of the contracts, most writers are already out of work 6 to 9 months out of the year. That's what the strike is about. So the threat of being out of work for 3 months, that sounds like an improvement to me. Mm-hmm. So now you got a bunch of writers who are already picking up part-time gigs to make it through, professional writers who are already hustling on the side. What difference does it make if I'm on strike, if I'm not employed? So they lost that leverage. They painted themselves in that corner, the studios. So,
yeah, and that's the part that I find so interesting. And I'm going to tell you, even though you brushed it aside in your Princeton Ivy League way, like I'm standing there in my BU sweatshirt, and you're going, just move aside. Like
I don't think that way.
No, but when you're talking about like not, you're not making that much money anyway, and it's kind of hourly. Don't you think younger people like millennials, they already have that mindset, like coming out of the pandemic, they're probably a lot of them already side hustling anyway. Mm-hmm. So they were probably more charged up because they maybe had side hustles there, that this really was an injustice moment too.
It's possible. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to die on that hill. I'm sorry. That's my theory. I'm going to die.
Sure.
Die on that hill.
You might be right. I don't know.
Yeah, that could be. But let's specifically talk about the tactics, because you and I spoke about this before, that the studios used a playbook. And the playbook that they used was one that they went back into the offices and pulled off a shelf, and they dusted it off and then they opened it up. Now, for me as an outsider, I could see this playbook on full display when I watched, as I had mentioned, Bob Iger. I was traveling, and I was at the Minneapolis airport trying to get to Boston, and I was getting tagged like crazy on the Bob Iger interview on CNBC when he was in Sun Valley, Idaho, at the Billionaires, summer camp, sitting, with his sweater, the sun setting down, and talking about the strike. And so the optics alone were so bad, but that told me, like, Iger, he's no fool. I mean, he's at Disney. He knows how to craft, a story and how to, paint a picture. He wanted to come across to me.
You think so?
Without a doubt. Like, he was so confident. And
you don't think he had handlers that day?
Oh, no, I think he absolutely had handlers. But if he had like a good PR handler, they'd say, excuse me, Mr. Iger, I think what we should do is we should put a suit, like a tie on. Maybe we could put you in a different conference room, maybe, or even undo your tie and show how much work that you're doing. Or maybe we could drive down the road and we could go into Washington and not be at Sun Valley. Like, those are all the things that I'm thinking about. But how he sat there in that chair, dressed how he was dressed, and he just had this cool cavalier attitude, like, come at me with your best shot.
Yeah, that was. You don't think? Well, that's the thing. I don't hobnob with these guys. So I would have thought it. To me, it seemed it was such a dumb. It was such a bad idea. I would have assumed
Bob Iger's not listening.
He's not listening to your podcast.
Yes.
To me, it was such a bad idea that I would have assumed that he didn't run it by anybody. But you think he probably did run it by and said, no, this is what we're doing.
No, I think it's the opposite. I think they knew, because CNBC, they set up there, they're going to get the publicity. They're doing all the interviews. They're doing coverage from Sun Valley. I think he was because I deal with this, like people like this all the time. Yeah. They think they're smarter then the reporter, then the interview. And he's so accustomed to running things.
Yeah.
And also he has this renewed confidence because he came back into Disney. You know, they got rid of the other one who he moved up the ranks. So I think he was feeling very good. And not only based on how he looked and that he had the absolute cojones to sit down and say what he did, but when he's referring to writers as, because I don't know if SAG was involved in it yet.
Not yet.
It was just
no.
WGA. Disruptive forces.
Yeah.
Like I saw a narrative that they've been using this through line there, that you all were the enemy, like this disruptive, like the dark force, and which I thought was incredible and took the arrogance of that. So when you saw that video, what did you think, that interview?
These are people who don't know how to, like you're saying, they didn't know how to tell the stories. Like, that's not the story you tell. That's where you put the villain of your story. I'm sitting on a bag of money with this view that I have in my, in this resort. That's where you set the villain. You don't put the hero there. The hero starts off in the gutter.
Yeah. Okay.
The hero's is down and out. The hero's not the rich guy. And the fact that he doesn't know this and is in the business where they tell stories, that's why you need writers, because a writer would have said, no, sir, I have some notes.
Isn't that funny? That's the irony, right? He needed a writer in there. Yeah. So his quote, like one of his quotes, so this is Bob Iger. So this is when he was on Squawk Box, and it's the Sun Valley Conference in Idaho. So it's just all the billionaires talking about being billionairing. Quote, it's very disturbing to me. We've talked about disruptive forces on this business and all the challenges we're facing. The recovery from COVID, which is ongoing. It's not completely back. This is the worst time in the world to add to that disruption.
Yeah.
I understand any labor organization's desire to work on behalf of its members to get the most compensation and be compensated fairly based on the value that they delivered. So not only is he painting writers as disrupted, evil people, but also that you're greedy.
Yeah.
And that they're barely middle class.
I also thought it was a bad idea that to understand what he said, you have to play it backwards on a record. I thought that was not a good idea.
I'm getting too serious for you in my PR. Is that it? Okay.
But you know what, though? It was like, when is a good time to negotiate a contract? Because when things are great, it's never a good time. There's never a good time. So what are you talking about? And that's a you problem, not a me problem. You know what I'm saying? I got to pay the bills. So this is how I'm going to pay by going on strike.
Yeah. So, but, I think when they played the record back, it said the studio's message is dead.
Yeah.
Get it?
Yeah. Right. And it was like, what are you guys, it was very, and who else? There was something else that they did to put out was like also tone deaf.
Well, I think wasn't it in Deadline that they had someone, so an unnamed source.
Right.
So really what it came down to is painting you all as greedy, as disruptive. And if anyone's upset that you can't see your favorite movie or favorite TV show, you have to blame them.
It's like we're disrupting his holiday on the mountain at the mountain resort. This is so disruptive. Do you know I have polo in 10 minutes?
Exactly. Okay, so that's I think that's one reason why the WGA, was formidable in this argument. What else in the playbook changed in this strike?
I think it was social media, because we could put a face to the cause. As you pointed out, the studios could not put a face to their cause. Who's the face of 20th Century Fox or Disney? Well, Bob, the CEO can step out, but that's not going to work. The richest man, and one of the richest men in America, that won't work. You got to find somebody else who'd be your spokesperson. So who's it going to be? And with the writers, you could go on social media and everyone can just tell our story, and that's the only thing we know how to do is tell stories.
And so how many other writers that you know were on social media talking about the strike?
I don't know what they're talking about the strike. It's so weird. 4 or 5, and I only know them through social media. I don't know them in person. Maybe there's a little more, but I'm not. No, there's a little more. There's probably a dozen or so. I don't know them that well, but they talk, and some have bigger reaches than others. So, But I'm sure there's more that I'm not seeing. So
The algorithm, Michael, algorithm.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah.
because you don't care. It's the algorithm.
Right.
But you were certainly vocal. I will say this. I didn't see any other writers being interviewed. Were there other writers being interviewed?
Yeah, then Adam Conover is very high profile. Justine Bateman.
He's high profile. Yeah, okay.
Justine Bateman as well. So
So she was out there. So she's a member of WGA?
yeah, and DGA, and so she's higher profile than me. So
Well, yeah. So why is she? What does she write? What does she?
well,
write?
you remember her from Family Ties, right?
Of course,
Mallory.
older sister.
Mallory.
Of course, older sister of Jason Bateman.
Things
But
didn't
what
work
is she-
out with her and Nick. Remember? Remember
Nick
Nick?
Valentine?
Yes.
Wasn't his name? See,
Yes.
how impressed are you?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So those were definitely people though, but I think your message was daily. I mean, you talked about it, and you just kind of wove it into your natural narrative. Why you kept sharing tips on how people can become, writers in Hollywood. You certainly, dotted it with, what was happening with the strike. Okay. So now you talk about social media. What else did social media do as a strike tactic?
Two things. One, it united the writers with each other. So we're all telling stories and they know how I feel and I know how they feel. But also it helped the public get a sense of what it was like. I forget that the public doesn't really know what we do. What I do, it seems like this is just an ordinary day. And the people I hang out with, other writers, we all do this. Nothing special. What we do doesn't seem special. We're just people doing it. But I imagine from the outside, you're pulling the curtain back and to like, oh, that's what it is. So I think the public was interested in that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And so what else? So, definitely united the writers, but what would you say about the public following you? What else did it do with them? Did it trigger something in them to want to fight on your behalf or raise the profile of you?
Yeah. Well, they shared the stories. They asked what they could do. And I was like, well, here's a link if you want to donate. There's a strike fund, which helps out people who are in need, even in other industries. They did that, but just sharing, honestly, just sharing it helped because you're just raising awareness. And that put pressure on the studios. They knew that you can talk better about this, I'm sure, like why it's important to win the PR war.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think they lost it?
I don't know. Like I guess it was because we were able to paint ourselves as the underdogs and they were the rich, CEOs, which is what they are.
Yeah. Trying to paint you all as the villain. As an aside, do you remember when I did that post about the strike when they hired the firm in Washington, D.C.? Okay.
Yeah.
And the CEO, her name was Molly. And I said,
Yeah.
I can't really dunk on another Molly. That post, when I posted it, like after 24 hours, it only had like 1,200 views. Mm-hmm. Which, I don't mean this to come off as a flex by any means, but I could get 1,200 views in like 45 seconds.
Right.
And part of me thought, I wonder, is this like somehow like some big conspiracy? Like if they follow a hashtag and then they bury any strike content?
Oh, that's interesting. Because I made a post about it as well. My feeling on that post was there's an announcement in the trades that the studios hired a big expensive PR firm. And I was like, why are you telling everyone? Keep it to yourself. Like your studios are spinning the narrative because they're like, keep that part a secret. If you're going to hire somebody to basically spin and lie for you, don't tell everyone that's what you're doing. Just do it. I was like, how'd you screw that up too?
Well, I think I think it's the same reason why Bob Iger was sitting there in his 3/4 zip pullover, as the sun was setting in the mountains. I think it was this flex to the writers to say, we're serious and we mean business. And now we're going to DC. And so in my post, why I was interested, because obviously I was being tagged like crazy because now they hired a PR firm. So the firm is out of Washington, DC, and it's the Levison Group, and it's run by Molly Levinson. So she has a background in media. She's worked in the press. She's worked in politics. So she's just a real like DC gal and, started this firm, and it's filled with Washington people who have a lot of experience, so extensive media experience. But when I did a little bit of a deep dive, and I'm not one of those TikTokers that goes like way deep and then they have these amazing, I'm surface level. I'm like 45 seconds max in half of my research. But this one interested me because on their website, all the clients that they were profiling were true underdogs. And they're the underdog firm. It was women's soccer and it was just all these causes. And I thought, isn't that interesting that AMPTP came in and thought that this was going to be the group that was going to be able to help them?
How interesting. You're right. They should have gone with like whoever does Exxon or whatever.
Exactly. You go for the killers. Now you're saying it like you never saw my post. You're like, oh,
no, I didn't see that one.
News. See, I'm telling you.
I watch all your posts. I creep on all your posts.
No, but you creep. No, but this is the one that was buried. But this is also the one that you said, your pal, the one who I named my daughter after, the one she forwarded it to you.
Right. And you know what else though I was going to mention? There was another post yesterday or 2 days ago. It was like the studios put out like a press release that the studios gave the writers their best and final offer. And then like that went viral because every writer started pitching on how dumb that sounds.
I know. Yeah, I was going to say.
And that went viral on TikTok or whatever, Twitter, whatever it's called. And then also the strike signs, which I'm pointing to. I have my strike sign there. That helped because we're on the sign carrying strike signs. And we're writing, it was just writers writing jokes and like dumb stuff.
Okay, that is such a simple concept, but I thought it was brilliant because it allowed like an optic of everything is the same every single day. It's just like people walking in front of the sign. And the only variation was it's super hot today or it's not. Or NBC cut all the trees so there wouldn't be any, shade. But the fact that you guys could write your write whatever you wanted on there made it fresh content.
Yeah, and it put a lot of pressure because I remember the very first day I showed up, someone shoved a pen in my hand. Go ahead. And I'm like, and then like 5 writers are looking at me. And I'm like, oh, crap.
So what was your first, I know you did a post on it. I can't remember what it was, but what was it?
I have it over here. Hold on.
Okay, sure. Don't show us. It's a video.
Okay. I don't know if you could see it. I have my sign. And it says,
are you introducing that language into my
your G-rated podcast?
Exactly.
Kids go to sleep.
No, you moved it. All I saw was the F word. What does it say? It says, I'm on strike. You write the effing sign at Michael Jamin. Oh, nice. Okay. That's good. Do people like that?
Oh yeah. They all started laughing. I was like, oh, good. Because that was pressure. Like when you're a bunch of writers, you come up with something funny.
That is pressure. What were one of the funnier captions that you saw on those signs?
Just variation. I don't know, a lot of punny stuff, variations of, goofy jokes. But what happens is on day one, you carry your own sign. But after that, for the most part, you're just picking up random signs. And so you might carry a sign with something stupid. Like every morning you'd show up to the picket line. And you're like, oh God, I got to find a good sign. That's terrible. That's bad. That's bad. All right, this will do.
Oh, really? No kidding. Yeah. So it's like
a
cruel game of dodgeball, but it's with a picket. So you said punny. What's the definition of punny? Is that a writer's?
A pun is the lowest form of humor. Yeah, it's the lowest form of humor. So you don't want to pitch a pun.
Oh, you don't want to pitch a pun. Oh, I get it. Okay.
That's not pun. That's.
Oh God. Oh, is that the term? Is that what people say?
Yeah, punny is you don't want to do that. So
you don't want to. And it's okay from you.
What?
You don't want to do a clam.
A clam, right? It's okay. Like on a picket sign, it's okay. Because it's kind of grabby, but in a script, you don't really want to do it.
And a clam again is what? Like it's a cliche?
A clam is a joke we've heard before. Said no one ever.
Yeah,
That's a clam.
Right, yes.
I was years old when I learned that. Right.
Yes. Okay. Right. You will never ever find me writing that term. I've never.
Yeah. That term. Right. You don't put it in your writing.
Okay. So we've gone through tactics. We've gone through social media. So what's the third thing that you think really changed it up that made a difference in this strike?
The fact that the actors happened to go on the strike the same time we did, because now they're picketing with us and they're high profile. They're getting more coverage because everyone wants to see the actors. No one wants to see us.
They want to see a bunch of writers with their punny signs.
Yeah.
Sweating.
Yeah.
So tell me about the actors then. Like who were some of the actors that you saw out there?
But the first day, the first day I was walking at Warner Brothers, and this actor named Chris Gorham, who I worked with on Out of Practice, and he works quite a bit. And so, hey, I didn't see him in 10, 15 years. We were picketing together. And then we were walking around the whole day, and I kept on getting stopped because people were like, hey, TikTok, Michael Jamin writer. And then when I was like, hey, this is Chris Gorham over here. Hey, Michael Jamin writer. I was like, sorry, Chris.
Sorry, not your time. So what was it with the actors? Could you tell, did all the actors, was it a thing? Was it bad not to strike? What were the unwritten rules for actors when it came to the strike?
Oh, I mean, I'm not sure I understand that. They're picketing? Nothing. I don't know if there were unwritten rules. They would just walk,
But were there a lot of them doing it? At what level? Like A, B, C, D? Were there A-level picketers?
Yeah. I mean, I missed the day. I think I had a call that I couldn't get out of. I was going to go down to 20th Century Fox because Wendy Malick and Laura Sandra-Como, who are both lovely. I worked with them on Just Shoot Me. Yeah. So they had, they rented either a coffee truck or a hot dog truck where they're giving up free food to everyone. And I missed it because I couldn't get down there. It was Just Shoot Me Day.
Darn. Oh, yeah. It was just, okay. So here's a question. What is she doing for work? Laura.
Who?
Sanji.
Laura was recently on, she was recently on Barry, but only 1 or 2 episodes.
Oh, was she?
Yeah, she was great.
Her. She was on Pretty Woman.
Yeah.
Do you remember what her name was in Pretty Woman?
Kit. Wasn't it?
Oh, I was going to say it's Kat, but I think you're right. It's
Kit.
Yeah. Very good. Oh my gosh, that's great.
She's so sweet. She's the best.
She seems like it is. And you know a lot of people that you'll just drop in a conversation that they're just pals, but then they're actors. And then I always do just this record scratch in my brain. What? Yeah. That's a friend of Michael's?
Who? I mean, I guess so. I don't hang out that much, but,
well, no, but you know a lot of people just because.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, obviously your work. Okay, but what else? Now, back in 2008, the actors weren't on strike, were they?
No, they were not on strike. The actors have not been on strike with the writers since 1960.
Really? Yeah. How long was that strike?
I don't know. It might have been a little longer than this one. I don't know. I wasn't around. Molly.
Okay, so well, almost. So when the actors, jump on board, do you think all the actors were on board with that?
I kind of think so. The really rich ones, they can strike. George Clooney's going to be okay. So it's okay. He's happy to go on strike to help out the working actors, I feel. And it was the working actors who need it, who are really struggling.
Yeah, and we didn't hear from a lot of actors who were struggling, so that really wasn't a storyline in the strike, except for Billy Porter was the one person who I heard, said that he was on the brink of losing his home. Yeah. Billy Porter, Kinky Boots, Billy Porter. But when I heard that, I thought, oh wow, that does hit home.
Yeah.
When you hear
Bryan
that.
Cranston was very vocal.
He was. Yeah, he was good. So was there anything else, do you think, having the actors come in, did that help raise the visibility for the public, you think, to learn more about what you all do?
Also, it says that, okay, so it's not just the writers who are being unreasonable, it's the actors who are being, now it's other people are being unreasonable. So maybe we're not being unreasonable after all.
Yeah. So not to switch over, I know you have your guild, but can you look at the perspective of just Fran Drescher, because so many people are familiar with her, and she received a lot of coverage, for the strike and negotiation. They're still in the negotiation phase. Do you know anything about SAG-AFTRA, right where they are in the strike?
No, I don't. I don't, but I'll say the fact that we have gotten this deal will make their deal easier to get, because that's why the sister guilds we're backing the Writers Guild, because they knew that the better the deal that we get, the more likely it is that they'll get a good deal. Because when they go to negotiate, the studios can't say, well, that's not on the table, when it was on the table for the writers. So they're asking for comparable things. There's some overlap. And so it'll make it easier for SAG to get a good deal. So I don't think SAG is going to be on strike for another 3 months. I think we're talking weeks.
Oh, you're talking weeks. Okay. Yeah. Is there anything that you could say about Fran Drescher? I mean, I know that she represents SAG-AFTRA, but what did you notice in terms of her leadership that may have made a difference?
Well, I'll tell you this. So I directed Fran Drescher when I was running a show.
Why did I know that there'd be a Fran Drescher story with you?
I directed everybody in the show.
Okay.
And so she comes on to play this part. And she was great. She was lovely. It was, nice seeing Fran Drescher. And so, but she wasn't quite getting it. She wasn't. And I was trying to direct her, giving her notes. And then finally, I said, I kind of walked up and I didn't want to say it, but I had to say it. I go, can you kind of do it like the nanny? And she goes, oh, sure. Like she went right, no problem at all.
Oh, interesting.
So she was game. Like, you don't know how someone's going to react. She was, oh, fine. It's, she had no ego. She was like, sure, I get it. That's the joke. Sure. And so I found her to be lovely. So that to me says a lot about a person, that one little interaction. So when she was, in charge of she's the president of the Screen Actors Guild, people like her. I think the people around her like her and want her to do well because she's a likable person. Because she
took your notes.
Well, no, because she's the kind of person. She's the kind of person. Like sometimes there are actors who freak out, and that was not her. That's,
right. But did you notice? I don't know if you watched any of the press conferences that she had, or just any of her interviews.
Oh, she was feisty.
Yeah. Well, okay. I was going to ask you what persona was she wearing? I mean, you know her personally.
No, I wouldn't say I know her. Matter.
Well, I mean, you know her more than the average person. But what did feisty Fran Drescher do? Like, what signal did that send? Do you think even to the studio heads?
When you're yelling at these studio heads, give it to them, like because none of us have the courage to do it.
Right. So everybody liked it.
Yeah, so I was like, good for her. Yay, because she has the courage to stand up to them. Bryan Cranston was the same way.
Do you think that other actors in SAG or after Sister Guilds, do you think they thought that she did a good job, looking at her thinking, she's making a difference here?
I don't know. I don't talk to the guild leadership, the Writers Guild, but she was being a squeaky wheel. Good. I mean, here's the thing. In Hollywood, you want your agent and your manager, you want them to be pains in the asses. You want your guild to be a pain in the ass because that means they're advocating for you. Sure. I don't want you to like anybody who represents me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's our bonus.
Bulldog.
Yeah. So that's our bonus mobilization tip, or our bonus tip about the new playbook is be a pain in the ass. Is that what you're saying?
Well, have someone be a pain in the ass for you.
On your behalf.
Yeah,
yes. Well, I presented a crisis plan today. Mm-hmm. And part of the issue was, there's a union element, that was in this crisis. And what I was mentioning is, now is the day of a time where a lot of these unions have a lot more, just kind of juice and energy behind them. Like last Friday, I had a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, send me a live link. And they're in a position where they can't say anything publicly, but they sent it to me because they knew that this would be something I'd be interested in. And it was the union, the auto workers union, YouTube Live. And it was a call to arms. He's at the podium and he's just calling out all the towns. He's like, I want you, Cleveland. I want you, St. Paul. I want you, Boston. And he's going through all the cities. Today's the day we're striking. I thought, wow, look at this is the new playbook. So you're talking about digital, talking about social. Yeah. And you guys, I'd say the WGA, you wrote the playbook.
You think we did? I expect that's nice of you to say that. I don't know. That's the thing. The thing is, everyone knows the middle class is being squeezed. Everyone knows that there's a huge wealth gap. Huge. And I don't think people even realize how big the wealth gap is between the very rich and everyone else. Like the rich are no longer rich. They're like filthy rich.
Yeah.
And so, I think there's an element of that going on now. It's like, hey, you got to start sharing some of this money.
Okay, so Michael, on every episode of the Indestructible PR Podcast, which I'm sure you listen to every week, and you already know this.
I have it on a loop. I go to bed to it. Nothing makes me fall asleep faster
than me going. I always like to add one little takeaway, and it's just like a little tidbit about how people can either build an indestructible reputation or kind of like tips from the new playbook. So
This is
over
good.
the past 3 months or even your new life on TikTok,
Yeah.
what would you share with someone in terms of like, just kind of like guidelines, playbook speak of, I don't know, just communicating or advocating for something that you want? Any type of tip that you could share?
Authenticity. So don't pretend to be something you're not. Just speak your truth. And you don't have to speak for the world. You have to speak for your guild. You don't have to speak for your union. You're just speaking for yourself. And when you just tell the truth, you can't get called out for that because it's your truth.
I love that. That's very Molly-esque, isn't it? That's exactly
I think so.
That's so true. Yeah, I think so too. As you would do on your TikToks. Whenever you talk about a woman, did you see my comment today?
Yeah, but I did see that.
Whenever you do a woman, you go,
I did this, I did this, I did that. Right.
I know. What's this?
What am I supposed to do?
That?
What should I do?
Well, I mean, it's better than other things, I suppose. But like every woman you ever do is, ee!
No, not every.
Yes, it is.
But I didn't do this. It was this. Oh my, thank you.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
this.
it was. No, you got to watch it again because I watched it again to make sure it wasn't. It was this. I said to her, it was the woman the pharmacist who was going to give me a shot.
Yes.
And I said to her, you're my favorite pharmacist. And she goes, oh, thank you. It was that. Oh, thank you. And then I said, take it easy. I don't know a lot of pharmacists.
Well, at Michael Jamin Writer, thank you so much for
Molly, thank you for having.
Well, I would say thank you for speaking with me, but we speak all the time. But I mean, thank you for speaking with me formally on the podcast. This was a perfect time.
Yes. And we have other adventures together coming up.
We do. This is the first of many to come down the road. So Michael Jamin, congratulations on the success of the end of the strike, the conclusion of the strike.
I'll give you a big hug, Molly. Thank you.
All right. Bye.